West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
At the end of the readings, we customarily add the phrase, offered as wisdom for the journey, and we invite you to respond with the phrase, may we walk in its light. This is simply an invitation to participate if you wish to do so. The first reading is from Charles Einstein, Sacred Economics. We live in an age of separation. One by one, our bonds to community, nature, and place have dissolved, marooning us in an alien world. The loss of these bonds is more than a reduction of our wealth. It is a reduction of our very being. The impoverishment we feel, cut off from community and cut off from nature, is an impoverishment of our souls. That is because, contrary to the assumptions of economics, biology, political philosophy, psychology, and institutional religion, we are not in essence separate beings having relationships. We are relationship. The second reading is from John Kenneth Galbraith. Education must seek to develop the needed sense of community, the feeling that at some point the special interest, even if it is yours, must give way to the general interest. That what best serves all best serves you. With this must go a shrewd awareness that those who resist the general interest must themselves be resisted. When corporations, trade associations, generals, bureaucrats, trade unions, lawyers, physicians, professors put their own pecuniary or bureaucratic interests ahead of the public interest, people must sense, react, and oppose. Offered as wisdom for the journey, may we walk in its light. Now over to Scott.
I think this might, there we go. Please join me in welcoming our speaker this morning. He is a writer, an author, a speaker who addresses human values, ecological economics, and the nature of current societal systems. That's a lot of words, and evidently he is known for making complex ideas very, very engaging, very clear to us. He wrote the book, The Value Crisis, and it was described in a journal called Alternatives Journal as, and I love this, dizzyingly well-researched. Dizzyingly well-researched. That's good. And a great reference on the in and outs of economics, politics, finance, and the human condition. The sequel, Our Second Chance, was published last February. Andrew was with us last week. I love that he came and joined us as part of our gathering, and he comes to us today to bring us inspiration on the topic of values, which we welcome, and we welcome you, Andrew. Andrew Welch. Please welcome him with that. Let's adjust this.
Once upon a time, on Canada's eastern seaboard, there lived a physician who was a vigorous supporter of the rights of workers and mistreated employees. He was often a champion of the underdog and had a strong sense of justice. Few things riled him more than the outrageous financial remuneration of those at the very top of the corporate pyramid. He vehemently protested the multi-million-dollar salaries, bonuses, pension plans, and severance packages offered to the CEOs of big corporations, and regularly shared anecdotes detailing the most recent example of these egregious payouts. And yet, he was equally passionate about playing the stock market and had very substantial investments in a wide variety of equity portfolios, including corporations with the very same compensation plans that he found so objectionable. That man was my father. Like most of us, my father regularly worked against his own values. He became infuriated by what he saw as unconscionable behavior by the senior executives. But at the same time, he supported that kind of wealth-seeking thinking with his investment dollars. As an investor, he selected stocks for their profitability. But as a citizen, he rebelled against profligate greed. He might have said that it was simply a matter of proportion. I think there is a deeper message, and I made a life commitment to explore and write about it. When I was first introduced to West Hill United, I was directed to your VisionWorks document, and I was immediately captivated. So when I was asked to address this congregation, I started in the same place with an exploration of your values. Now, that's not a common practice. Most people are like my father, never really giving their values much conscious thought or stress tests. In VisionWorks, you commit to justice, compassion, honesty, openness, integrity, courage, kindness, forgiveness, and wonder. You seek wisdom from rational sources that don't rely on the supernatural. But there are other value systems out there, and I don't mean those of theistic religions. For many people, the good life is defined by personal wealth. And I've got to hand it to them. Money makes the world go round. With enough money, you can do anything. Your document doesn't mention wealth. So I ask you, on what rational basis do you believe that your chosen values are the best ones for you to adopt? Is it faith? This morning I'm going to give you a simple, rather objective, scientific basis for recognizing that the class of values that you have chosen is necessary for life and nature. I'm also going to discuss why much of the world does not share your commitment or give the values you describe their due precedence. Another goal is to give you a framework for better understanding some of the daily value conflicts that you deal with every day, conflicts that you might not even be aware of. Let me give you a scenario. You have $50. What will you do with it? How many people would likely be spending that on food or might enjoy buying something nice? So, there's an option. Number one, spending it. How many people would see the wisdom of setting the money aside for a rainy day? How many of you are now harvesting the wisdom of investing money for future years, which are now? So saving it might give you as much joy as spending it. I happen to know that this is a very generous congregation. I'm pretty sure that a good proportion of you know and can attest to the personal joy that you get from giving money away to a good cause. So giving it also demonstrates an important value. But here's the thing. We all know the value of spending that $50 and of saving it and of giving it away. But we can only do one of those things. And for every dollar that comes into our hands, we have to make a value choice. So the American author Robert Reich categorizes these behaviors as the consumer, the investor, and the citizen. I call them our value personae because all three exist in each of us. The consumer looks after our immediate needs. We cannot have life without consumption. The investor looks after our future needs. The availability of resources to meet our immediate needs later is not assured. So we must set some aside or plant seeds that will feed us in other seasons. The citizen looks after the needs of others and of the greater good. And all three value personae are fundamental to humanity. Yet all three are in direct conflict. Resolving these conflicts is almost second nature to us. I mean, buying an electric vehicle. Oh, well, that's the right thing to do for the planet. Citizen. But I don't want to pay that price tag. Consumer. On the other hand, I do hold shares in EV manufacturing. Investor. And again, even though we may favor a certain value personae under certain conditions, evolution has hardwired all three into each of us. If our consumer values are getting a little out of hand, our investor or our citizen values can intervene and regulate. Now, this brings us to a pivotal challenge for our society. When we are making large collective choices, society potentially also has all three value personae at the table. The consumer personae is represented by the marketplace, fighting for more goods, more choices, and lower prices. The investor persona is represented by corporations, big business demanding higher prices, better profit margins, and unfettered economic growth, wealth for the future. The citizen persona used to be represented by the church, enforcing charity, compassion, and higher purpose. It might be argued that it should now be represented by governments. So this highlights two major problems. Firstly, note that the three personae are very fixed in their values and have very no longer mixed within the same entity. So the marketplace and corporations have very singular and narrow agendas. They only have one value system to follow. Secondly, and more importantly, in our modern techno-industrial civilization, no comparable entity is representing the citizen values. Oh, the governments claim to, but when the economy is on the line, they show their true colors, and they represent industry and sometimes help consumers. But the values that are listed in your VisionWorks document, well, they tend to sit at the bottom of the pile, don't they? Society does not give justice, compassion, honesty, openness, integrity, courage, kindness, forgiveness, wonder, and wisdom the influence or status that they deserve. Instead, everything has a price. Allow me to share a story that puts an interesting spin on this. In 1999, two economists at the University of Chicago were researching a problem faced by 10 daycare centers in Haifa, Israel. The issue was parents coming late to pick up their children at the end of the day. And whenever this happened, a teacher had to stay until the last child had been collected. And on average, about 20% of the parents were late. Each daycare center had that problem. Now, it's widely accepted that if you want to reduce the incidence of a particular behavior, you penalize the offending individual when the behavior occurs. So, the economists decided to introduce a fine. Any parent who was more than 10 minutes late to pick up their child would be fined about $3 per child per incident. Well, sure enough, the behavior immediately changed. Late pickups went up. Oh yes, up. At all of the centers every week until they stabilized at between double and triple the previous averages. Why? What the existing theories had failed to predict is that adding the fine completely redefined the relationship between the centers and the parents. Previously, the constraints on behavior were social in nature, and the value system was one of courtesy and respect for the teacher's time. Human values. Once the centers announced the penalty, the relationship shifted to a financial one. Within the new number-based value system, parents decided that the fine was good value for the convenience of arriving later, and they gratefully took advantage of the new guilt-free option. Now, perhaps what is even more interesting and startling is what happened when the fines were removed 3 months later. Nothing changed. Once the culture of courtesy and respect had been broken, it stayed broken. And the parents continued to take advantage of the new convenience, now with no penalty whatsoever. In the words of the economists, once a commodity, always a commodity. The human motivations and the economic motivations were incompatible and could not be used interchangeably. Indeed, the introduction of a number-based value system, even temporarily, resulted in a permanently altered parent-staff relationship. In that light, I want you to note something important, which is the basis of my contribution to the discussion of human value systems, specifically around consumer and investor values. As humans, we can express them as food, warmth, shelter, those are our immediate needs, and security, hope, prospects, and plans, those are our needs for the future. But when it comes to the way our world ultimately works, consumer and investor values are measured by money. Yeah, they are inextricably tied to that overwhelming, all-pervasive pursuit of economic growth. They are what I call number-based values. And if you leave this hall or Zoom room today with nothing else, you will need to understand the concept of number-based values. So, number-based values are those that are measured by number. Examples include monetary wealth, GDP, likes, followers, residential square feet, votes, and market share. More is always worth more. And they inherit three critical properties of numbers. One, they are infinite. Regardless of how much money you have, you can always add more, and the sum will then be worth more. Two, they are linear. That is, 7 is always greater than 5, and 20 is always greater than 7. And 3, they are universal. So these properties apply for every person in every location and culture. You can't say the same of triangular or happy. I also refer to these as quantitative values. And by definition, when you are measuring value by number, more is always better. Now, how did they come to so thoroughly dominate society? One contributing explanation is the scientific revolution. Rationality dictated a new law for the pursuit of knowledge and wisdom. If you can't measure it, it doesn't exist. So wealth exists. Popularity exists. Majority votes exist. But faith, love, justice, integrity, morality, wonder, those are qualitative values. And they have no place in rational science because they can't be objectively measured by number. And yet we know they exist and have great value. That much is reflected in your VisionWorks document, which in many ways could be seen as a reaction to the prevalence of number-based values in the society you live in. It's West Hill United's way of codifying the citizen value persona. It's also clear to me that your VisionWorks is a call to action to respect the environment that is not only all around us, but that we are an integral part of. And why is our natural world in such a mess right now? I'll suggest a big answer to that question. One of current society's prevalent pursuits is maximization. We want to maximize our personal wealth, of course. Companies want to maximize profit and shareholder return. Social media influencers want to maximize likes and views and followers. But here's the thing. Remember that with number-based values, the value possibilities are infinite. And more is always worth more. That means there's no such thing as an objective maximum. Not for wealth or profit or dividends or viewers. You can always add more. And more is always better. Maximization is impossible. Those values define an unattainable goal. And that simple concept, that more is always better, does not exist in nature. It's an entirely human-devised, but unhuman, if you will, construct. Physiologically, more food is not always better. More warmth is not always better. More territory is not always better. Even more oxygen is not always better. You're in an environment of pure oxygen, your hypothalamus will race overtime and you'll be dead. Life-based qualitative values have a concept of sufficiency. Number-based values do not. That's one of the reasons why I make unusual claims like there's no such thing as corporate greed. Huh? Now, greed is defined by excess, surpassing sufficiency. And we know how much a human needs to survive. But when corporations are programmed by society to maximize their wealth, there's no such thing as enough. As humans, we might think some corporations have enough, but as they grow, their needs grow. They're not being greedy. They are simply doing what we, as humans, programmed them to do at their basic core. And it's not just institutions that get onto those exponential curves. It's also part of the biochemistry that drives each and every one of our impulses. When you are hungry, you feel the urge to eat. When you have had enough, that urge goes away. And eating more will eventually make you sick. You can't trigger that hunger signal by eating more. It's a qualitative value. When you derive joy from income, it's a different story. You initially get a dopamine hit from that newfound wealth until you get used to it. It's a process called hedonic adaptation. And once you get used to it, you can't repeat that joy unless the amount goes up and up and up. Fortunately, or unfortunately, there is no limit. And it's not just money. Number-based addictions occur throughout social media, where young people live or die literally based on likes and views. In extreme cases, they will commit what are known as performance crimes, or will share horrific bystander videos, all with an eye to driving up views and followers. They have to go viral. They have to have more than anyone else. And the race to a limitless top simply means that the images have to be more and more outrageous. So what happens? What happens when you govern your existence on a finite planet with finite resources using a value system founded upon the idea that more is always worth more? And you give those values such force that they trump every qualitative value, including those that manage the most basic laws of nature. Disaster. Crisis. You get the future that we have given our children and grandchildren. And that is my rational proof that the values you have chosen to champion are worthy of your support and adoption and commitment. As a side note, the three value personae might even reflect stages of evolution. All life consumes. More sophisticated life prepares for its future. Squirrels put their nuts away for a while. And at even a higher level, we demonstrate empathy and care for others of our kind. Perhaps we are striving for some fourth level where we make decisions based on an understanding of the interconnectedness of everything. In closing, I know that VisionWorks 2021 is a living document, and also that it is probably not intended to cover every aspect of your individual lives. So perhaps I've given you something to think about when you next revisit that content, or when making decisions outside its scope. You have done a stellar job elucidating your citizen value persona, and I love what it says. However, the consumer and the investor value personae don't go away. They are still necessary and important to each and every one of us, as well as to your community and to your society. They must not be allowed to trump the citizen values every single time as they do now. But they do need to be at the table and acknowledged. So what's to be said about consumption and preparing for the future? How might we set values for lifestyles and life goals and community policies and conduct in such a way that they can be more impactful and honor the quantitative realities as well as the qualitative visions? I hope we can continue that conversation both after the service and in mid-October and mid-November. My plan then is to share some of my breakthroughs in the study of human-based values and talk about how we can apply these uniquely graspable frameworks to the greatest challenges facing our world today. I wish I had discovered West Hill United 20 years ago, and I salute your community. Thanks.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.